Welcome. I'm Baratunde Thurston, and this is Clarify, the show focused on the issues that matter to you most this election. Mike and Spotify have teamed up to break down the issues and break through the rhetoric to bring you the facts. Remember facts? We'll be joined by policy experts, journalists, and musicians throughout this season. Today, we're talking student debt, and it includes a fascinating conversation with Diplo. Now, if you've paid off your student debt, congrats. You're a billionaire, and your friends hate you. But for those of you still struggling to pay, don't worry, you're not alone. More than 40 million Americans share a combined $1.3 trillion in student loan debt. That's about $30,000 per person, money that could be used to pay for a car, put toward retirement, or watch Netflix for 300 years. Nearly 70% of bachelor's degree recipients leave school with debt, which has a long-term impact on their lives and the larger economy. Young people have put off starting businesses, families, and buying homes, while Uncle Sam, banks, and universities come out on top. So how did college become so expensive? And what can be done about it? We'll break it down for you in other videos in this series, but first, a chat with Diplo. The DJ and hitmaking producer shared his thoughts on the student debt crisis and the importance of education in his life. What was your first experience with the idea of student loan debt, either directly or through family or friends? Like, when did it first hit your radar?
I think my generation, as far as my family is out, my generation, me and my sisters were the first kids to actually, go to college and had aspiration. Like, that was normal. We were trying to make our way from high school to college to get jobs. Before that, my mother and father, their brothers and sisters, no one ever had aspiration to go to college. It was like unheard of. Just
Where
like
was this? Where were you guys?
This is in Florida.
Okay.
So my father, his father, nobody, it was just you get a job out of high school. That's what you do. There's no option for college.
Right.
My dad ended up going to Vietnam for the war and didn't enter college till he was almost 30. But he took advantage of it, full advantage. He went to the GI Bill, was able to go to college, and decided I'm gonna make my kids go to college too. And that was, it's kind of stopped the cycle where our family, just kind of always had rudimental jobs in Florida and just lived off, the land and just, I think we made a change, our generation. My father never had like a social life. He was literally just working with three kids. Finally got the opportunity to go to college, but he had to go to war to get, to get the money to attend college. It was very important for us to go to college. I went to university in Florida because also we didn't have money to pay for me to leave Florida, but I went to UCF.
Okay, University of Central Florida.
Yeah, so at the time it was almost like a community college. It was very cheap. It was a state school, so I was able to easily pay for that.
Okay.
It was only like $2,000 a semester.
Yeah.
Eventually, I kind of was like, look, my life, I got to get out of Florida. I see my thousands of cousins. I'm like, let me try to make my way out of here.
Yeah.
Climb out of the state, and I went to Philly, and went to Temple, and that was like my first, experience leaving Florida and like, becoming a human being, like becoming an adult.
You weren't a human being in Florida?
I wasn't in Florida.
Were you like a subhuman creature?
Yes, I was like a swamp creature.
Literally in the swamp.
But I made my way out of Florida. It sounds funny, but in Florida, you really don't. It's like you have tunnel vision. You don't see outside of Florida. You don't see like a month in advance. You live paycheck to paycheck.
I think that's a lot of people wherever they are.
Yeah, I had to work like 3 jobs to stay in Philadelphia to pay my rent. Like I didn't tell you this before, but I didn't actually graduate like in a graduation, but I went to Temple University there. Tuition wasn't that high, but it was very high. But I ended up finishing 2.5 years there, and then kept kind of trying to go. I had to work so much that I wasn't able to like finish school on a regular schedule.
Okay.
And also trying to create music and live my dreams and do what I wanted to do as a creative person.
I'm sorry that didn't work out for you.
Well, it did, but it took a lot longer than I wanted to. But
what was your loan situation in your Temple University in Philly experience? You were spending money you didn't quite have, so you took out some loans?
Yeah, I took out loans. I borrowed money from my family. I had jobs full time. Paying rent and just buying food is difficult. That's the most difficult thing.
You chose to eat. That was your problem.
When you get the loans, it's true.
And how did all that affect your pursuit of music?
I think that I didn't actually full time become a musician and just use that as my job till I was about 25 years old, and which I'm just still lucky. I mean, at that moment, I connected and I said to myself, look, everything else I'm doing here, working at Subway or taking the zoo, taking tickets or, at the movie theater.
You worked at the zoo?
I did. I worked at the Philadelphia Zoo for a little while. I worked at movie theaters. I was a school teacher.
So I know you've been very supportive of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
You made no secret of it. In fact, In one of your tweets, you said, "Vote for Bernie Sanders or I'm unfollowing you."
Yeah.
So I got two questions for you. Was his stance, because he had a pretty aggressive stance on college funding and student debt, was that a part of your support of him? And if so, could you go into some detail?
I mean, Bernie Sanders had so many crazy key aspects to his agenda that I loved. Some of them were very lofty. Some of them were difficult to even for people to understand. And I think he was going the most utopian route as far as a candidate. But I love that because we never had that opportunity. We never, people that are younger that aren't involved in politics had never seen a candidate like Bernie. We haven't seen it in our generation at all. And
you
it's
don't think
amazing.
Obama counts?
Obama was very, I think it was very motivational, but he was, even some of the stuff Bernie Sanders said, Obama could never have used that to be elected. It was like so far left and so crazy and so amazing to me.
They actually called Obama socialist when Bernie really was.
Obama was so motivating to young people as well. But it was like 8 years ago when Obama came in. It's a whole new generation of kids now. I think it's even more, kids are more entrenched in the internet. And Bernie Sanders came along, and when you start following him and Google searching him and figuring out who he is, it made young kids very excited about politics because some of the things he talked about, like student loans and student debt, was intriguing to kids. Like that affects their day-to-day life because politics doesn't affect our lives as much as it used to. I gave him some music for his campaign. I loved the energy that people had for him. And I love that it got the young people involved in politics. That's one of my main things I love about Bernie Sanders.
How connected are you, or how aware are you of the stories of people not like you who had that debt? Like how close are you to that?
Like my son's mother is still, like her debt was $200,000 in debt. I'm helping her pay that off slowly. Like almost everybody I know, my management, they're still paying their debt off. Like everybody I know has debt. I'm like a very small percentage lucky story where I just happened to strike gold. Like you said, I was able to make money in my profession. And
well done, man. Good job.
Thank God. I don't know what I'd do.
The Diplo plan.
I don't know what I would do if I didn't make money. I'd be back in Florida, back in the swamp. So, but everybody I know they're still paying it off.
Yeah.
I mean, some people they're paying off slowly. It might take them 10, 20 years. But some people, it's so daunting. You're not guaranteed a job when you're out of college either. So you don't know what's next.
And as a musician, as an artist, do you have concerns or any experience with people who weren't able to choose what you chose because of the debt, right? Because they feel obligated to take a certain line of work to be able to pay that down, and so they don't get back to their creative side because this financial need is so strong.
I mean, for me, it's even that moment when I decided to be a creative musician, it was the scariest day of my life. Like I'm like, look, I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna do this. It could be like a black hole you just jump into, or you could be successful. Most of the time, it's just black hole. Like most of the time you can't. It's difficult to make that decision. And what you can count on is a stable job. So a lot of people do leave their creative dreams by the wayside and continue on the path to having a normal job, or not a normal job, but just being able to like not concentrate on things that motivate them in a creative way.